Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Womenstrual, a series of conversations around the ebbs and flows, literally and metaphorically, of life, and a safe space to discuss periods. So today I have a very special guest. She is the founder of Acquintz Consulting and also the organisational inclusionist. Welcome, Grace Mosuro. The cheers, the crowd goes crazy. Wow, 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 wow.
Thank
Hi,
you for
Grace.
having me. Hi.
How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've been talking off camera. I've just started Invisalign. So excuse the, the list for like the funny mouth movements throughout the conversation. But it's lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to
How
be here.
has your year been so far?
My year it's been up and down. It's been like absolutely amazing in terms of just the amount of things that I've done and the people that I've met and what I'm trying to do with my business. It's gone so quickly, but I'm grateful. I'm excited.
Yeah, likewise.
It doesn't feel like that much time has passed since January, but it also feels like, when you feel like you're really present. So I'm literally in the moment,
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's been amazing. It's been
Good.
challenging. It's been exciting. It's been revolutionary. It's been
Wow,
awesome.
they're great words to describe your year. Wow. Curiosity kills the cat. The challenging piece. I assume you mean that in a good way.
Yeah, I always see challenges as being good because I think they're an opportunity to pivot or to think about how you can do things differently or better or even just appreciate what you have done. But I work in Acquaintance Consulting is an equality, diversity and inclusion consultancy. So for me, the challenges have really come from a lot of the negative rhetoric about DEI that's started off in the States and has kind of had a knock-on effect in the UK because we essentially follow the States, unfortunately. So for me, I think those have been the challenges, is really appreciating that there's still so much work to do in this space, but again, seeing that as an opportunity, okay, this is the noise, this is drawing more attention to what we do. So how do we make the most of that and make the best of it?
Yeah.
So that's where the main challenges have been, I think. And obviously I'm an entrepreneur, I'm self-employed. And I know a lot of people that do similar work to me. It's been a tricky year, you know. Organizations have been kind of treading on, they've just been a bit cautious with their spend. So for consultants or people that are self-employed that deliver services to businesses, I know for me and for some of my friends, it's given us time to really hone in on actually what is our offer, where is our added value, and also thinking about additional things that we want to do. My podcast, The Organisational Inclusionist, is a massive passion of mine. I set the podcast up because I felt like in the equality, diversity and inclusion space, there is a lot of talk being done on podcasts that are hosted by white people. And what I felt was that meant that the topics were centered around white needs and meant that people from the global majority and other underrepresented groups, the things that we want to talk about weren't necessarily being discussed. And I'm really big on creating a safe space for people. Like, I think, there are conversations that need to be had that are going to be uncomfortable, right? But I believe in having those conversations in safe spaces. So that's what the podcast is for me. And I've been really lucky that it's grown in the sense that, it's reaching the States, it's reaching other parts of Europe. Which for me is kind of the measure of success. People always say, what are your numbers? I haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
I don't check them. Don't check them.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's more about the message. And if my podcast impacts one person or changes one person's view on inclusion, I'm happy. But I think, having the time this year to really work on that and to learn how to edit video. It's transformational. Because that stuff ain't easy. But also having people reach out to me from the States, from Europe to say, I've heard your podcast, can I come on? I'd love to come and talk. That has been a massive, when you need a confirmation sometimes, just to say this, you're on the right path. This is what you should be doing. And I've
100%.
definitely gotten that. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
That's great. And I think that is literally, that confirmation in terms of staying in flow, continue to do what you do, and then opportunities kind of find you. It took me a really long time to believe that. And then took me a long time to accept that because I was like, yeah, but like you just feel like you're just continuing to do the same thing every day. And one of the words for me, one of my words, like every year, I almost like have a brand meeting with myself. My head of marketing, which is me, my admin assistant, which is me, all of these people. Like, you know that, have you seen that picture of like a cartoon and it's a Spider-Man at one side of the table, then another Spider-Man, and then another and it's like, this is my board.
Yeah.
It's literally all me.
I love that.
And one of the words this year is compound, because I was thinking a lot about the importance of building not only like solid foundations, but actually in order for your kind of house to be finished, there needs to be layers upon layers upon layers upon layers upon layers before someone can put a key in the door.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, I've found it, especially in this new transition, really difficult to see that at some point someone's going to put a key in the door, because I feel like all I'm doing is compounding, putting this layer on top of that layer, on top of that layer, on top of that layer, on top of that layer. So I think that confirmation has also encouraged me that, like, as this journey continues to evolve and shift and change, the compounding things that I'm doing in my own silo will open up opportunities elsewhere and like conversations elsewhere as well.
Definitely. Like I'm really excited about what you're going to do, and just the conversations you're going to have and the conversations you're going to spark and the impact you're going to have with this as well. So, you know, take that as confirmation as well. Like when I heard about this, I was like, this is going to be huge. And I genuinely think so. So yeah, you're going to be fine.
Oh, thanks. Needed it. So we'll take it back to the beginning. Nigerian born, UK raised.
Yes.
What was the transition from Nige to here like, and when did that happen?
So I moved here when I was 5.
Okay.
And I still remember it as well. I came off the plane in October.
Do you remember what date?
I can't remember.
My birthday's in October.
It was in October. I think it was 1989, and it was freezing cold. And I just remember talking, and like, you know, when the smoke comes out of your mouth because it's so cold. And I said to my mum in Yoruba, which is my language, I said, Mum, I'm smoking a cigarette, because the smoke was coming out. And that's the only other time I'd seen that, because obviously Nigeria's never cold. And and that was the start of my forever, really. The transition was interesting because when I moved to the UK, I couldn't speak a word of English. You know, Yoruba is my first language. And it was just interesting because the UK wasn't yet prepared for that. So what that meant for me and my sister was that when we started primary school, because we couldn't understand the language, they put us in a remedial class. So it's basically just me and my sister in like a class for essentially kids with learning difficulties. But it was just the two of us. And we had our own dedicated like special education teacher. And it was amazing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like when I look back, it was messed up, right? Because that shouldn't have happened. But it was amazing because I was basically in class every day with my best friend. And we had, you know, the space to ourselves and whatever. Within the year, we'd learnt the language, and so we got moved into general population, which is what I call it. So we went into our form classes.
And did you go into your form at your level of form, or did you have to go start a year below?
So what was interesting as well is that, so in Nigeria, traditionally, children are educated ahead of the UK. So once we'd learned the language, it became really clear that actually these children are really smart. So we went in at the year we were meant to go in at. But I think what was also really interesting as well in that transition is like, okay, we're part of the group, we're with everyone. And I grew up in Clapham Common, so in those days it was mainly black kids. But what I really struggled with was I still had my Nigerian accent, and I really got bullied for that. Like not bullied necessarily, I got teased.
Taking the mickey.
And I remember like being in school, and I'd have kids that looked like me calling me African boo-boo and like making monkey noises. And I was like, I don't get this. Like, what's happening? Because obviously I've grown up in Nigeria where I didn't even know I was black in Nigeria because everyone was black. So we don't call each other black, you know? And so I've come to the UK. I'm with people that look like me, but they're taking the mickey out of me. And I'm like, what's going on?
Strange thing to process in your mind, isn't it?
I remember when I was growing up, it wasn't cool to be Nigerian, whereas now, like... So the transition was interesting, but... I grew up in Clapham Common, love Clapham Common even till now. Don't love the gentrification as much, but Clapham is still home, even though I live in Croydon now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the transition was interesting. I think obviously the biggest thing for me is being in the UK, I'm very aware that I'm a black woman, but being in Nigeria, you're not aware of that. I took my daughter back to Nigeria, so she went for the first time in 2020.
Okay.
And, you know, her dad's Nigerian as well, but she's never been. And when I took her, literally as soon as we got in the car at the airport, my daughter just looked like she was just really at peace. And I looked at her and I said, baby, what are you thinking? And she said, Mommy, everybody here is brown. And I was like, yeah, baby, this is Africa.
Yeah.
But for her, her existence has been, she's always been part of a minority. So she's never seen that. And just seeing the peace that that brought her was just like really magical. And I'm so glad she got to experience that. But it also made me appreciate and realize, like, you know, being black in the UK is an experience, right? I absolutely love my identity. I love everything about where I'm from and who I am. But I realized, and we talked about this before we started the recording, that as black women, we walk with stress, right? We walk switched on. We walk alert and aware. And I think particularly in the work that I do, I find that as black women, we struggle to feel safe, you know? And it's not about physical safety necessarily. It's like, you know, am I accepted for who I am? Like, you know, someone's looking at me a certain way. What are they thinking? I just got back from Ibiza, and, you know, Spain is, we've got a lot of noise going on in Spain at the minute as well against kind of immigration and whatever. And I really felt black in Spain. And I was just very aware that, like, you know, as a black person growing up in 2024, and it's mad that in 2024, you know, as black people, we still feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Like, that is crazy. So the work that I do is really about making sure that I impact this world in a way where when I leave it, my daughter feels safe. She feels like she can be her complete and authentic self, and she feels like that won't be a barrier to her success.
Yeah.
So like transition-wise, the transition to, you know, being a British African, which is what I tick, is it's been amazing. Like I love my life. I love the UK, but it definitely comes with challenges.
Yeah, it
Definitely.
does. And I think that's beautiful that you're able to take your daughter back to Niger, because there is definitely something. It depends on your experience in your homeland.
Yeah.
But I have a similar one in that I'm from Grenada. Well, my dad's from Barbados and my mum's from Grenada, but I resonate more of Grenadian culture.
Yeah.
And every time I go to Grenada, especially as a child, I would cry when I got there and I'd cry when I left. I was born here.
Yeah.
And like that feeling, I think there's a lot of things. Like when you land, you go over the sea. So all of a sudden, this feels like a mystical land. It starts to feel like almost euphoric. Then the door opens and the heat just all over your face. And you're like, I was like, oh, this is so great. And then you get off and they say, welcome. And to a lot of, on the plane, they often say, if this is your first time in Grenada, welcome to Grenada. If you've been back here, if you're Grenadian, welcome home. Yeah. And like even that, my mum, like I'd always look over my mum and she would just have a tear of just like that home feeling. It's amazing what somewhere that resonates so much with who you are, what that can bring about. And in light of all of the hurricanes and everything, me and a friend were talking earlier around, I've often thought, you know what, I would migrate back to Grenada. In a lot of ways, I thought I'd probably do it in like 30 years' time. But I actually can see myself doing it in more like 10, 15 years' time. But it all sounds lovely until there's a hurricane. And I think in a lot of ways, that migration piece needs, if it's something that people want to do, I think it needs a little bit more care and consideration when exploring it. And I think in the meantime, getting back to your homeland as often as possible is a great happy medium, because I think there's something really impactful about not only coming away from the West, but coming away from the West and going back home regularly that helps you stay connected to like the truth of who you are.
Definitely.
And like the truth of your heritage, the truth of like your ancestry. Like she probably went to places that you grew up. Like she probably walked the ground that you walked at her age.
Right.
So that, even that is just, it's powerful.
So powerful. And I think what as well was, what I found really surprising, because in Nigeria, we people always joke about NEPA, bring back the light. Like the electricity goes left, right and center. Like you could be watching, you could be brushing your teeth and the light would just go. There's no explanation for it because you know, you've paid the bill.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was thinking, you know, there'll be times when she doesn't have Wi-Fi, where she can't play with nothing. What's she gonna do? She's gonna be bored. My daughter had the best time. Like, she was out at night walking the compound with my uncle to like lock up the gate. She was checking on the chickens. She was literally, I've never seen her so just comfortable and present. Like, in the UK, it's so busy. They've got all these kids, all these screens that they're staring at, but there's something about the stillness of your home or Africa that is just different and grounding. And I think for me as well, what's really powerful is that when you step off the plane, there's a smell, and the smell is just home. Like, you can smell the sand, like the clay, the sound, that the ground is, even though it might be, you know, covered with concrete, you can still smell it. And it's just so grounding. Like, it's beautiful. So I do agree with you. Like, getting home often is important, even for people that are from the UK that go off somewhere else. Like, there's nothing like home.
Yeah, it is. Do you ever think you'd move back?
Nah.
That was a
straight no.
Really?
And the only reason I say no, like, I'd love to live in Nigeria, but it's just not safe. It's not safe, but, you know, like, I remember the first time I went back, before I went, loads of my friends from college who were also Nigerian, they were scaring me with like the armed robbers stories, and they're like, oh, you know, you got to be careful, they'll come and kidnap you and this, that, and the other. So I was so anxious going. And even though that didn't happen to us, thank God, it's real, like, it happens. You know, there is so much imbalance in Nigeria. We talk here about, you know, the 1% or the 10% having all the wealth, but in Nigeria it's crazy. And so what that does create is some really desperate people. I think the challenge for me in moving there as well is like, a lot of my family who I would like live with aren't there anymore. So it's like the connection isn't necessarily there in terms of like security and community. But also, I just don't understand the politics. And Nigeria is very political. And if you don't understand the politics, what are you doing? But where I would move to is Ghana. And do you know what's crazy is I've never been to Ghana.
Me neither.
I've got so many friends that are from Ghana or have been to Ghana. And just what I hear is that the utopia is, you know, it's a stone's throw away from Nigeria. So I could pop in and pop out. So I would definitely... You know, if there ever came a time to move, you know, I don't see myself retiring in this country. Ghana is
that's
calling
high on my
me.
list. That's high on my list. One of my friends, she's probably watching this. She's been inviting me to Ghana for two Christmases now. So yeah, I think this year I'm gonna genuinely try and make it happen. I do kind of want to go outside of that, because I think that Dirty December is like just literally that.
Dirty December.
It's literally that. It's like party. And I know that like the life in, I assume, like anywhere, isn't like a party city all the time. So I would like to kind of go when there's still things socially happening, but not in the crux of everything. So I can really see, if I moved here, this is probably what my life would feel like.
No, definitely.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But how old is
how it is,
I will. I will. How old is your daughter?
She's 12, going on 30.
12? You don't look old enough to have a 12-year-old. That's why my face
girl.
is doing that.
I am though.
What?
I love it when people do that. But no, this is
12?
God's grace.
I thought you were going to say 7.
No, my baby girl's 12. And do you know what? It really winds her up because her friends do the exact same thing. They're like, your mum looks so young. And I'm like, thanks.
You really do.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't get me wrong. I always say, it's funny actually, when I was younger, so I'm 40 for anyone listening. I say it with chest because I love my age. But one of the things, when I was younger, when my mum was 40, I felt like my mum looked and behaved like a 40-year-old. Like, to me, 40 was really old. And then as I started to get towards 40, I started to get really excited because my 30s were my best years.
Really?
And I know that it only gets better. So months before I turned 40, I was telling strangers, I was like, I'm telling 40 soon. And I'm so, like, I love it. I love, you know, I've personally been through a lot, like health-wise and like in terms of loss. So for me, one of the things that one of my aunts always says to me when she sees me, she's like, you really don't look like what you've been through. And that is such a powerful statement.
Like, because the highest compliment in my opinion.
Right? Because like life will keep on lifing. And one of the things that we get to do is choose how we respond and react to it. And I think that's so important. But I also learned a lot from my mum. Like my mum really struggled and sacrificed. But what that meant is that she sacrificed her health. And you know, I think the biggest lesson my mum taught me is that I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And I've got a responsibility in terms of having that education of what that sacrifice can do to you and knowing what I want to do and provide for my child, that I'm really, really committed to my health and well-being and just to my joy, because I know what that then enables me to do with and for my child. Like that's really, really important for me.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I'm still at the 12-year-old. I was listening, but I'm still...
Yeah. She's 12 and she thinks she's a big, big woman.
That is
Bless
insane. So talk to me about parenting. What are some of the like highlights of parenting?
So the highlight for me is I legit live with my bestie, even though we debate it sometimes because she'll call me and be like, bro. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? She's like, but I thought we were best friends. I'm like, yeah, but was your mum first?
Yeah, by the way.
She's like, oh, I'm confused. Well,
let's clear it up.
You know? But like, no, she legit is my bestie, even though she'll like deny it at times. But yeah, it's just beautiful having just a little person. You know, I take the responsibility of being her mum really seriously. Like I always say that, because I tried to have my daughter. So like we tried a number of times to have her and I felt like it wasn't happening. And when I think back, it didn't actually take as long as I thought, but it felt like it was taking forever.
Yeah.
Like every pregnancy test was a disappointment. So when I got that, you know, that positive result, I was in, like I was checked in. I was like, right, we're doing this and we're doing this properly. So yeah, just having that responsibility and taking it really seriously is really important for me. And just seeing how she's developed. Like I do get emotional about the fact that I do still remember, you know, carrying this little girl out of a car seat, like from the hospital. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then now seeing someone who don't want to give me cuddles anymore, like who I have to beg for a kiss in the morning. Like, you know, that is tricky. But I just love the young woman that she's growing up to be. Like it's beautiful. It will always be a challenge because I'm protecting someone's life. Do you know what I mean? I saw this video on Instagram the other day and it was like a meme and it was talking about, it was basically these two people talking and it was like me with my daughter whenever she tells me someone's troubling her. And it was like the daughter basically saying, don't do anything, mum, don't do anything. And like the other person being like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. Just act like you, obviously, you knew nothing. And I sent it to my daughter and she didn't find it funny. She was like, it's not funny. I shouldn't have to say that to you, mummy. I shouldn't have to say that to you. But I am that mummy bear. Like, especially growing up, like my mum was so busy just putting food on the table. My mum didn't have time for drama. My mum didn't get involved in any of that stuff. So growing up, if I came home and told my mum someone troubled me at school, my mum would be like, if you come home again and tell me a story in which someone did something to you and you didn't finish it, you're going to be in trouble. So I learned very quickly that I can't rely on other people. Like if I've got a problem, I need to deal with that myself. And I know what that created in me. It's not a good look, okay? Like I literally am, and I don't want to be anymore. I'm all about soft life now and being a soft girl, right? But growing up, I was very much Miss Independent. No one could tell they'd hurt my feelings. Like I was like just armored up. And I don't want to create that in my daughter. So I want her to know that mum's got your back. Like anyone can get it, you know?
No, it gets busy. It's not a problem.
Listen,
we can get busy.
Problem,
not a problem
at all. And you know, if anything kicks off, just say it was your sister. It wasn't your mum. You know?
Yeah, because you can pass.
Right.
You can pass.
So like I take the responsibility really seriously. I love that girl to death. Like she is my absolute world. And that is a joy. It's just being lucky enough to have someone who I love so much more than myself. Like I would lay down my life for that girl.
That's actually just beautiful. And like every mum I know has that same sentiment. Now that you're on this side of life, so 40, which is doesn't even make sense. I'm still there.
Still a baby girl.
Still a baby girl, still a hot girl.
Right.
It doesn't stop. But now that your daughter's kind of coming of age now, what are some of the things you've learned about womanhood that you would pass on to her? Or you are passing on to her?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, right? Because I'm raising a preteen at the moment, and preteens don't listen. Like, they think they know everything. They think you were born in the olden days. When she says that to me, I'm like, yo, you need to relax.
Literally.
But do you know what was mad? Yesterday, we went to see Inside Out 2.
Inside Out. Is that cartoon film?
I can't believe you don't know Inside Out. Yes, it is. It's the moods. It's this teenager, and then inside her are these mood characters that live in like a control panel in her brain.
I think I've seen...
Sick movie. You've got to watch it.
I've seen the... Is it like a fluffy kind of character?
There's a few of them. So there's anger, joy, sadness, and two others. I can't remember what they are.
Okay.
But it's firstly, you go watch it. You'll love it. But Inside Out 2 taught me more about my daughter than any book could teach me.
Really?
I was in that movie yesterday, like, wow, I wish I bought a notebook. Like, the Inside Out 2 follows the girl as she's grown into a teenager. So she's 13, and one day she wakes up and these new emotions move in, and they kick out the old ones. And the new emotions are anxiety, their envy, their embarrassment, like loads. And I'm literally sitting there like,
that's very interesting.
And it like talks about how those characters or those moods essentially change the character, the main character, Riley's sense of self and who she's trying to be in her new environment because she's going to high school. And I'm sitting there like, wow.
Yeah.
This is my daughter. My daughter's in year 7. I'm watching some of her antics. I'm like, what is this? And literally Inside Out 2 was the revelation. I looked at my daughter completely differently after that movie. I was like, I get it now. I get it. So like being on the other side of it now, like raising a preteen, and also with the revelations that I got from Inside Out 2, I got to be honest, like one of the biggest things that I knew we were going to struggle with, so me and her dad aren't together, we're divorced, but one of the things that I know he's probably always been a little bit scared about is her starting her period. Because what men, I think, are yet to understand is that once your period begins, it's a chemical change, right? It's not, oh, she's just moody. It's actually beyond your control sometimes. And, you know, as adults, we obviously learn to be aware of our feelings and to learn kind of what, you know, I'm feeling funny. What's going on? What's today's date? Oh, I get it. And then we can calm ourselves. Whereas she's in her like second year of her period. She's still getting used to it.
Yeah.
And when she has her moments, sometimes we have to just be like, this isn't even her. This is the hormones, right? And that enables us to give her grace. Yeah. I'm very grateful though, because touch wood, and by God's grace, she's not having it as bad as I did. Okay. Like my daughter won't even tell you when she's on. She just gets on with it. Like you won't find any evidence. Yeah. There's nothing. Like she's literally, scares me a little bit though, because I'm like, no, I don't want you to be this independent. Yeah. But she's just, you don't know. I'm like, when were you on your period? She's like, I can't remember, but I think it was last week.
You would know if it was me.
This is what I mean. When I was on, everybody knew. Like I was emotional. But I think because my daughter lives in a 2-parent household, you know, and this is one of the things that I regret, like she has learnt to be quite independent, because when she's with her dad, she's not going to talk to her dad about her period. And so I think what that then leads to is that when she's with me, she just carries on the same way sometimes. And so I think, you know, she's just learned to do that. She just does that. But she manages it really well, like really, really well. Sometimes she is a bit, you know, she will be sensitive, and I'm just like, to her dad, can't get her some chocolates. But yeah, I think we've been really lucky. When I started my period, I was 13 years old, and from the age of 13 to 15, I was a devil. Really? Like to a limit, obviously, because I was raised by a Nigerian mother who did not pet to beat you. Like my mum. Yeah. So I knew my limits, but I hated my mum for 2 years. Really? Anytime I looked at my mum, I saw red.
Wow. And was this while you were on your period, or just 2 years straight?
2 years straight. And it was definitely because of the hormonal changes I was going through as a result of puberty.
Yeah.
And I was also, you know, when you're going through puberty, you feel like you're an adult, you feel like you're growing, you see other kids getting more independence or whatever. But I grew up in a household where my mum wasn't about that.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be home by 7.
Yeah, you're a child,
I don't care if you left home at 6. Like, my mum was very, very strict. So for me, during that time, I was seeing my friends get a bit more freedom and I wasn't getting any. And I'm going through all of these things. Mum didn't really talk about those things. So it felt very lonely. And I think as well, because my mum was so busy with work, like, and providing, I kept a lot from her in terms of how I was feeling. We didn't talk about stuff like that. So I felt very alone during that time. And that made me very angry.
Got you.
So I just remember one time I don't know what I said to her. It wasn't exceptionally rude, but it wasn't nice. And the only reason I know it wasn't exceptionally rude was because I didn't get slapped. Right. But she was hurt by what I said. Yeah. And I remember she left the house to go to work and she'd taken my house key by accident. So I had to run after her to get it. And as I ran out, I was like, "You've got my key." She turned around and she was crying. And this is how I know it was hormonal, because I saw her crying, but I didn't care.
Oh, you didn't care either?
Nah. There was nothing in me that made me go, "Mommy."
Yeah.
And when I tell you, my mom, growing up, the way I idolized my mother, my mum was my first superhero. When it came to going to uni, I went to Brunel University because I didn't want to leave my mum. So going to Brunel meant that I could come home every single weekend and be with my mum.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas my siblings, once it was their turn, they were out. Right. Me, I was like, "You're so selfish. How could you just leave mum?" Like, my mum was my bestie, but during those 2 years, it was irrational. Like, the way that there was no reasoning with me at all. I just didn't like my mum. My mum loved me to pieces, but emotionally, hormonally, I couldn't connect with her. Like, I loved her, but I hated her at the same time.
Yeah.
I was just like, "Why won't you just let me be free?" She just wouldn't. But now as an adult, I'm really grateful she didn't, because there was some crazy things happening in like the area, in the streets. And my mum, without a doubt, saved my life.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for that. And I try and get that across to my daughter now. We're battling about sleepovers. So I'm like, "No, you're not going. Sorry."
Can people stay over? I'm going to come back to the period stuff naturally. But from the sleepover thing, can people sleep at your house?
So people can sleep at my house if I know their parents.
Yeah.
Right? And the only reason I say that is that I need to trust the parents, and I also need to know the child well enough, because what I won't have is someone comes to my house and something happens and then it becomes a mix-up. It needs to be a situation where I know the child well enough, where I know that child's nature, right? And I also know the child is respectful.
Yeah.
It's mad as well, because I was raised in the UK, but even though I was raised in the UK, I was raised in a Nigerian household.
Which is different.
Right. Completely different. So in my culture, you can't call an adult by their first name, right? So I took my daughter's friend to Inside Out 2 yesterday, and I was dropping her home, and on the way home, she said, "Grace."
It's auntie.
My ears pricked. You know when your ears just automatically, like, I was like,
I'm thinking, whose voice is that?
and I was like, "Yes," but it hurt. And I could almost feel my daughter go rigid. Like,
Because she's thinking,
you know, like,
not
I'm
the
quite
one.
traditional in that way. Like, I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're Asian. Call me auntie.
Yes.
If you're a child, call me auntie.
Agreed.
Okay? And if
Agreed.
anyone says, "Why are you calling her auntie? She's black." You just explain it to them,
It's
right?
up to you to decide what the story is, but
Right.
this is a respect thing.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, are we at that level in terms of the child that's staying at my house? Do they understand, the rules that exist in my house? And are they well behaved?
Yeah.
But I think, and a lot of people don't agree with my mindset about sleepovers, but my child's innocence is more important to me than one day of fun or one night of fun, right? And it's not about whether or not I trust my child. It's about her awareness of danger. She doesn't have it because I protect her innocence, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, I can't speak for other people's natures. So while I can protect her, I will. So yeah, people can come and stay over at my house, but there
Yeah.
are rules, and they, as long as they respect that, that's cool. And obviously as well, as long as the parents are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But in my house, I know who's in my house. I know what I permit in my house. Whereas in somebody else's house,
Could be
I don't know
free
who's
reign.
coming in and out, And if I'm having somebody else's child stay at my house, there are no visitors.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not having people coming in and out.
Yeah.
While that child is my responsibility,
Yeah.
I'm respecting the wishes of the parents.
Yeah.
And I'm making sure that there is no danger,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
that's my
I agree.
stance.
I agree. I had a friend in school who wanted me to stay over at her house. Like, my mom's similar. She's like, she always said, you can sleep over at somebody's house if I know the parent.
Yeah.
I know, again, similar, I know the child's ways. And also if the parent calls me.
Yeah.
I had a friend at school who really wanted me to stay over. She was like, oh my gosh, you can stay over at my house at the weekend. I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, just no problem. Like, just get your mum to phone my mum. Grace, to this day, the mum hasn't called.
Right. So
And
the sleepover didn't
the
happen.
sleepover didn't happen. And I'm there waiting by the phone every day after school. So I told her, Jade, like, just tell your mum to call my mum. And she said, okay.
Yeah.
Up to this day, the mum didn't call. So my mum said, guess you're not going.
Yeah.
Because really, it's definitely what you said around protecting the innocence and also helping children understand the awareness of danger. Because I think that's a piece that isn't always spoken about.
Yeah.
Often it's like, I don't know what's going on in their house, but it's about their intuition in understanding this feels a bit dangerous. My godson, one of my godchildren, I was telling him, it's a rabbit hole, I shouldn't have gone down it, about one time when my house was broken into and my laptop was stolen. All of a sudden, really? Oh my gosh, what happened? Are you okay? All of this type of stuff, yeah? And I ended up by telling him, like, what do you think I should do next time? He said, you should get a metal door. So I said, he's 4. I said, okay, I'll think about that. And he said, you should also get security. So I said, okay, can you be my security? He said, no, they'll take me as well.
Oh.
I was actually cracking up. I literally love Zayn so much. I was actually cracking up. But what that showed me in that moment is he's got a little bit of an awareness of danger.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like, yeah, I can be the strong superhero outside your house. He's like, I'm 4.
Yeah.
I can't help you. I can't help you, auntie. Like, you just got to get the security and that's that.
Do you know what is so funny about that? That reminds me, I don't know if it was during lockdown or just at the end of lockdown, there's this video going viral of parents tricking their kids and like calling them from upstairs, like, come quick, the mum's all panic flustered, putting on her shoes. It's like, quick, so-and-so's outside the house with her daughter, she wants to fight me. So you've got to fight the daughter and I'm going to fight the mum. So I was like, let me do this with my child and see what she does. And I was
so
like,
funny.
and I sent it to her dad. I was like, I'm going to do this to Laura. And he was like, that girl is not going to put on her shoes to come outside to fight with you. I said, what do you mean? That's my ride or die. Yes, she is. He was like, bet she's not. So I did it now. And I'm like, really into it. She comes out. As soon as I said, you need to put on your shoes to fight the daughter. This is my daughter's face. She said, Mummy, I'm 10. I'm not fighting anybody. She said, but I'll record it and call the police.
Count me out.
She said, I will record it. I said, so you will record me being rushed?
Listen.
She said, but then we'll have evidence.
No, you don't understand where I'm from. Literally, snitches get stitches.
Right.
That is that is.
I really couldn't believe it. And the way I was too shocked to laugh.
I can't believe you're not going to back me.
But she was also like genuinely confused. Like, you really think I'm 10 years old? I'm going to come outside.
That is actually so funny.
I think the challenge that she's got is because she's an only child, she's not had a sibling that she fights, right? So she won't know how to fight, unless she's really put
in
into
a fight,
it, right?
yeah.
And when I sent her dad the video, he was like, "I told you, our daughter's a softie. She ain't about that life.
Not about it
at all."
That is hilarious.
I couldn't believe it. Whereas when I was growing up, if my mum had done that with me
outside,
I would have listened. I would have tooled up. I would have got a frying pan. I would have got a wooden spoon. I would have got hot 100%. Water. My mum used to always talk about if someone comes to this house to attack you, or if someone comes here uninvited to cause trouble, you don't go outside and fight them. What you do, I think they did this in Nigeria. She's like, what you do is you boil hot water and you pour it into a pot, or you just take the kettle and you go upstairs and you pour it. That's what my mum used to say. And she's like, so they should not have come to.
No.
And then the other thing she used
Black
to say,
parents are ruthless.
listen. And the other thing she used to say, which was so random, because
Ruthless.
up until now I've never seen a real gun in my life, right? But my mum used to say to me, if anybody is ever shooting at you, run in zigzag line. Because a bullet can only go straight. So
You know what? She's onto something.
I was just like, Mum,
She's onto
where
something.
is this going to happen?
But you know
She's like,
what?
just so you know.
But equally, if that happened, I think I'd be like, oh yeah, zigzags.
100%. They're not ready.
Oh my gosh, no. Black parents are ruthless.
Seriously.
They are ruthless.
Seriously funny.
Wow. So going back to your daughter's period, did she start at the same age you started? And what was your period
No.
like when, how old were you when you started?
So I started my period in year 9.
Okay.
My daughter started her period in year 6.
Women are starting younger and younger.
That's what I'm hearing. So even when I was in, there was only one person that I remember starting their period in primary school in our whole year.
What age is that again?
She was
Up until
10 going on 11.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she started really early. And I remember she wanted her period to start. So she'd been talking about it from the year before because one of her friends started. And I was like, listen to me very carefully. You're wishing for something you're going to regret because nobody wants a period, okay? And I was also like, I didn't have mine till year 9, so you're probably going to start late too. So when she started, I was like, what? But then after she started, she's like, Mommy, I get it now. I was like, right, it's not fun. It's not fun. She handles it really well though. But yeah, she definitely started early. And I don't know what it is. There's a lot of people say it's the food they're consuming.
Yeah.
I just also think our kids are growing up too quickly, and there's something about our body's response to how we behave. You know, I do believe that, you know, stress or just our mindset can impact just how our bodies react, right?
Absolutely.
So I do think there is something in just kids thinking they're older than they are and convincing their body that they are.
Yeah,
Like,
you might be onto something
it's
with
mad.
that, you know.
It's really mad.
Yeah, you might be onto something with that because I agree. I seeing a 16-year-old today is not what I was when I was 16. When I was 16, I felt like I was 16.
Yeah.
I wasn't 25-ish.
Yeah.
Like, but I think you might be right in terms of that mindset piece and how that affects how your body responds to what's happening. But I wonder why that is. Like, I think we all kind of go through it in that when we're younger, we're just dying to be older. We just want to be older. But I think that rush has become even more apparent these days. It might be the introduction of social media and the fact that you can compare yourself to somebody else who's your age, who seems to be leaps and bounds ahead of you in terms of life. So as a result of that, you try to mirror that person.
Yeah.
And actually all of the compounding efforts around that person's life who seems to be leaps and bounds ahead of you, you don't have. So I feel like there's a little bit of a juxtaposition between wanting to be older, which is that natural thing, especially as women. Like, we just want to get older, we just want to be able to go out, be independent, but not actually realizing that there's such value in your youth, and allowing yourself to come of age gracefully and actually experience being 12, being 15, being 16, being 18, all of these type of things. Like, I would not go back to being 18 today because I just think an 18-year-old today, what they have to contend with seems, so, but I guess our parents would say we wouldn't go back to being 18 in 1990 or 1987 or whatever. But I think there's definitely something in that mindset of, I think you might actually, that might be an interesting theory to explore, because I think you naturally come across anyway like somebody who just generally has like an optimistic disposition. Like, you always think the best of something. And I think that plays a massive role in how we show up in the world and what life presents. Yeah, definitely. So I do think you might actually be onto a very interesting theory around them thinking they're older than they are, and that is actually impacting how their bodies are actually. That's really interesting.
If it's proven.
Grace Mosuro. Cite. Please cite. So in terms of your period journey, has it been fairly smooth? Has it been rough? Ups and downs?
So my personal period journey, I cried when I started my period because it was really painful. So I had really bad period pains. And I just found it messy and I just didn't like it. And I just remember like crying to my mum about it, like, what is this? This is horrible. And my mum was, you know, she was like, unfortunately, this is being a woman. So when mine started, I found it quite traumatic. And for me, this is why, you know, like to what you were saying about when we were 12, right? When I started my period, I felt like a child. And I felt like, why is this happening to me? I'm
You're
not
only
a
a
woman.
child. Yeah.
You know, I don't want this. Whereas my daughter really wanted it. So yeah, I think for me, that's one of the stark differences that I noticed. I think I had peaks and troughs as well with my periods. I had some periods that, you know, the pain was so bad, and then I had some that were fine. I think what I loved about my period is that, contrary to today where, you know, periods are talked about more, when I was in school, periods weren't really talked about. I went to a girls' school as well.
Okay.
But when we had like male teachers, all of us, we used to really take advantage of our periods. Even if we weren't on our periods, the teacher would say, where's your homework? I'm on my period. Conversation done. Done.
Yeah. That's my get out of jail card.
100%. I'm on my period. Okay, no problem. No problem. Do you need anything? Are you okay? And it was awesome. But yeah, no, I think I've never enjoyed periods. But one thing I will say is that I had breast cancer a few years back, right? And as part of that process, I was required to take monthly injections for 3 years that basically hibernated my ovaries. Because of the age that I was when I got breast cancer, it was deemed as a young case of breast cancer. Okay. So, and my breast cancer was estrogen receptive, which means it's hormones related. So they hibernated my ovaries to reduce the likelihood of recurrence during a certain period of time, which is why I had to do the injections for 3 years. But obviously that meant that my period stopped. And I hated it. Really? Yeah, I missed because even though we don't necessarily enjoy our periods are our signs of being women, right? Yeah. And there's so much that comes with that. Yeah, you know, it's healthy to release that. The hormones that we release and the, you know, the cycle that we go through is natural for our body. It's healthy for our body. It's important for our body. But also those hormones, you know, they impact skin elasticity. They impact our sleep. They impact our energy. So when my ovaries were hibernated, like that massively impacted who I was as a person and as a being. So I really struggled with that. And then I stopped the injections, I think September gone. Okay. Was my last injection. I danced into the office. I said, it's my last one today.
Wow, what a moment.
When I tell you, those injections are horrible. I don't wish them on anyone. The biggest injection I've ever seen in my life, like easily the needle is about 2 millimeters thick, right? So if you think, no, maybe one, no, 2. So this is a centimeter, right? 2 millimeters is about that. Someone's probably watching like, no, that's 4. But anyway, you get the drift. Yeah. It's a thick needle. Yeah. And every month to have that put into your stomach, it was horrible. And then what it meant is that because my body wasn't producing estrogen, I was retaining a lot of fat in my stomach area because that's what happens during menopause or whatever. Because our body stops producing that, that's where we put on weight traditionally. So for me, I was really struggling. I was 36 years old. I was basically put into early menopause for 3 years. And it was like really, really traumatic. My period came back on the 1st of January, 2024. And I was so happy, but also like, what do I do? I've not had a period in 3 years. Yeah. How do we do this again? And luckily, my daughter was on her period, so we had pads in the house. But I was like, oh my gosh, I would have been
I'm not even equipped.
You know? So one thing I will say is that even though as women, periods aren't easy, having been someone that went through 3 years of not having one, I absolutely love having a period, right? It's really important for me and how I feel. And it's part of the process of who I am and how I feel, etc. And I am my healthiest when my body is able to do all of those things. Yeah. Obviously, I'll get to a point where I'm of a certain age where my body doesn't need those things anymore. And I'll be better equipped to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whereas when it happened, I was like, this is horrible. And I think also because of all the treatments that I went through as part of the cancer journey, it was very different. So it was quite traumatic. It felt like a lot was taken during that time. So I lost my hair. I lost part of my breasts. I lost energy at times. You know, there were certain things I couldn't eat anymore. So it felt like a lot was taken, which is why when I finished my treatment, I got my locks because I was like, I'm taking my hair back. You know, there was so much that felt taken, and I was just like, I want my periods back. You know, I just wanted to be me again.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it for me. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I commend you, because I think a lot of the conversation around periods is often negative.
Yeah.
And part of the reason the Gynae Project even exists is to not even change it to just positive, but introduce the positive side of it. Because I think often women think, oh my gosh, my period. But like, it depends on your circumstances. Yours being like such a deep reason for actually being glad to have your period back. And there's loads of other situations that I think are reasons to be excited to have your period back. But yeah, just touching on the cancer piece, if you feel okay to. Christmas Eve, you got the news, right? The worst thing to get before Christmas Day. How have you transitioned in your mind from, because I'm mindful of despite the fact that now you're cancer free, how have you transitioned in your mind from being a breast cancer patient to now having thrived after that? Because I'm sure that there was a mental battle that continues to maybe go on in your head even post the treatment.
Yeah. It's interesting because, so I don't think anyone expects to have cancer, right? But I'm a believer, so God goes before me and everything.
Amen.
But one of the things that I remember is that when I got it, I cried solidly for at least 2 days. And I cried not because
Were
I
you a
didn't...
mother at this point?
Yeah. So my daughter was 8 when I was diagnosed. And my dad had died 2 years before that of terminal lung cancer. And she was really close to him. And so her only knowledge of cancer was that it killed her grandpa. So when I got the news, that's what had me crying for 2 days, is that I've got to tell my daughter that I have cancer, and all she's going to think is my mom's going to die.
Associated to that.
Right? But also, because my dad had passed, I'm the eldest of 3 kids, and my mum's not very mobile. She's not very well. So in my culture, once your dad is gone, who's the head of the house? The eldest is now the head of the house, right? So when I got that news, I was like, yo, people need me. This can't run. So I cried because of my fear of not being able to help my family, and also of wanting to protect my daughter from the pain that I knew she was going to feel with the news. But there wasn't any part of me that I thought I was going to die. Like from the day they told me, like the first person I called was my auntie, who was my prayer warrior. She's now passed. May her soul rest in peace. But I called her and I was like, Auntie, they've just said this. And she said, Gwemi, let's pray. So Gwemi is my Yoruba name. She's like, Gwemi, let's pray. And she prayed so hard for me. And that prayer switched me on. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this. We're going to be fine. So I think from, day 2 of the news that I switched on, I was like, it's cool. We've just got some work to do, you know? And I think the reason as well that I cried is because they told me that I was going to have chemo first. And one of the things that I've never been raised to ask for help, right? I've never been raised to need other people. My mum always said, make sure you make your own money so you don't have to rely on a man. Be strong, be this, be that. It was never be feminine, be soft, none of that, right? Yeah. So as soon as I got it and they said I was going to have chemo, I was like, I'm going to look sick. People are going to see me as weak. People are going to think I need help. People are, they're not going to see me as me, right? And that was really painful to acknowledge. It's like, I don't know this. Like, what does this even look like? And that really scared me, especially because I was a single mom. And it's like, I don't want my daughter to see me struggling or whatever. That was really difficult for me as well. But once I got over those thoughts, all I got into was that I'm going to survive this. And now we just need to do this in a way where I thrive, my daughter thrives, right? And it's funny because I remember when I was in labor with my daughter, I had a really long labor. And I remember the whole time I was in labor, my only thought was survival. Like all I was thinking was, I need to live. Like I legit could have died. Like it was so painful and it went on for so long. I was in labor for 28 hours, right? And it was out of bodily to the point where I felt like I was watching myself because I was in so much pain, right? And I remember going almost into that same place when I got the news. It's like, we are going to survive this. So, you know, I just did it. I drove myself to chemo. I drove myself home. I continued the school run, continued like making meals, like things got done, you know, it was normal. And I do regret it a little bit because someone asked my daughter a few months ago, you know, how did you feel when your mummy had cancer? And she said she didn't look sick. She didn't act, she did everything the same. And I was like, I did, but maybe I shouldn't have, because I want my daughter to know that it's okay to need help. And that's something that at 40, I've fully embraced now. And that's one thing I'm so grateful to cancer for, is that part of my life enabled me to become soft Grace. Now, anyone that like has known me for a long time is probably going to laugh at this, like soft Grace. But like legit, I ask for help now. You know, I'm really comfortable with being soft. Like even at the gym, if a weight's too heavy, I'm like, excuse me, can you please put that back? Whereas back in the day, who's asking for help? I'm going to struggle with that. Whereas now, no, can you help please? And I love that. I love that I see vulnerability as a strength now, whereas before I didn't. I saw it as a weakness. So in terms of thriving today, like I call myself a breast cancer thriver because I am 1000% thriving. And I think what breast cancer did for me and what that treatment did for me is it made me commit to my life. Like I always say I'm running into the rest of my life. Like I'm living every day with purpose. I'm finding joy in every single day and I'm committing to living. Whereas before I feel like there were periods where I was just existing. I'm not here to, as Maya Angelou says, I'm sure it's Maya, she says something around, you know, create a life in which you are thriving, not just surviving or something. I don't want to just survive. Like, I want to live big, like YOLO and that. You know. So I think that's what my journey was like in terms of being a patient and then now being someone that's thriving afterwards. But I appreciate it's not like that for a lot of people. But I think what was really important for me was mindset. Like when I made that decision, I do think that massively helped in terms of just committing to living, like living and loving during that time, I think really helped me. I know when my dad passed, my dad fully committed to checking out. Like he just was not going to fight it. And he was ready to go. And he was gone within a week of being told, even though he'd probably had it for months or years even. Like it was so far progressed. And I think my dad as well, even though I do wish he was still here, I think that what I learned from him and his experience is that mindset is really important. Because I do feel like my dad chose to go and I wasn't choosing to go.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
I'm grateful to hear that. That perspective. So brave, man. Like we've all been through stuff, but the C word is like genuinely for me like the biggest mountain to overcome. So to have you here to have the conversation, and I didn't realize it was so recent. So the injection that you got in September.
So that injection, I was having it from the day I finished my treatment in 2021 up until September of last year. So I had to keep doing that for 3 years.
Got you.
And then now I take a medication called tamoxifen. I was taking it for the 3 years, but I've got to take that for another 2 years. And then I'll have a check and they'll decide if I need to keep taking it.
Okay, got you. And that just keeps the cancer at bay?
So that reduces estrogen production in my body. So I take a lot of supplements, right? Because I'm not trying to look older than I am.
Have to be healthy, honey.
Right? So obviously estrogen is like, it's what feeds our body. A lot of like the oils and stuff that our body produces, skin elasticity is reliant on estrogen. So I take supplements to basically help me, particularly with my joints, because a lack of estrogen can impact that as well. But yeah, I've got another 2 years of that, and then hopefully I get to come off that too.
Oh, yeah, be praying for you, man.
Please.
I will be praying for you.
Thank
I
you.
really will. How did work play into that chapter of your life?
So it's interesting actually, because I was really scared that I would either lose my job or I'd have to take like sick leave and then go months of not being paid. But my CEO at the time was amazing. Like, I joined his company when there was only 10 of us. And by that time, I think there was like 150, 200. And I remember telling him the news and he was devastated. But he... so basically, when I got the news, I was in the middle of helping them with a joint venture.
Okay.
And I was acting as a partnerships director with a view to moving into that role permanently.
Got you.
And so I started my treatment during that time. And my CEO was like, Grace, aren't you going to take time off? And I said, absolutely not. And he was like, why not? And I said, because I'm not going to take time off. And while I'm gone, someone else gets the job I've been working hard at, right? And I said, and there's no one here that I feel would advocate for me in my absence.
Or something. Yeah.
And he was like, Grace, are you serious? I said, absolutely. So I used to have chemo on a Friday. I'd spend Saturday, Sunday in bed. And then I would wake up on a Monday for work. Wow. And I'd be on call. Sometimes I would like, maybe 4 o'clock, I'd be flagging. So, and they could see it because I'd kind of be like, so they'd say, Grace, you can jump off now. We're nearly done. And so I'd go to bed. But I was refusing to stop work. And obviously you could see the commitment, right? You could see the work I was doing regardless. So so then luckily they started recruiting the permanent roles around the time, I think I was halfway through my chemo. Okay. And so when they were recruiting, there was a bit of nonsense that happened in the sense that I was the only black person that was working on the JV at the time. All of my other colleagues were white. One of my colleagues in particular, she got given her permanent role, no problem. And I found out about it. So I spoke to the interim CEO for the JV and I said, you know, I found out about this. When can you confirm mine? Yeah. And he said, oh, you'll need to interview for it.
After you've been acting it for so long.
And after my colleague had just been given hers.
Swanned in.
So I said, okay, because I was exhausted. I was going through chemo. You know, it was just another example of me being discriminated against. Like, why can't I just be treated like everybody else? I've been working my bum off. I was too tired to fight. So I was like, whatever. But I was really sad. So I contacted my actual CEO and told him about it. And he called me. And I was like, I'm tired, really tired. I just want to be treated fairly. And I think I might have started crying. And he was like, leave it with me. And he called the guy and said, nah. And then the guy called me back and was like, oh no, Grace, what I was saying was. So I did, I got treated fairly in the end, but it was a fight and it was just unnecessary. But anyway, once I got that promotion, my CEO was like, can you please take some time off now? Like,
the job's yours.
He was like, we'll pay you while you're off.
Yeah.
Like, so don't worry about money.
Oh, great.
So I think I was off for 5 months, full pay. So it was awesome. There was no issues. Yeah. But if they hadn't sorted out, like, finalizing the job before I left, I'd have worked the whole way through.
Yeah.
I'd have gone to surgery and then come in with my bandages out. Hi, guys.
Morning, everyone.
I'm typing. I didn't care. But yeah.
Wow. And is that what birthed the organizational inclusionist?
Yes.
Okay.
So that experience, as well as multiple experiences as a black woman throughout my career, but also while I was at an appointment with a consultant, she made a comment about, oh, now that you've had cancer, it's going to be really difficult for you to get a job. And I just thought, that's a really dumb comment, but she's right, yeah. But then I also thought, I'm black, I'm a woman. Those are things I can't hide, right? Yes. People can see that. But now with this cancer diagnosis, I can choose whether or not I declare that. Yeah. That's an additional potential barrier. And
Does it come under disability?
Yeah, you're protected by the Equalities Act from discrimination because of the risk of recurrence.
Okay.
And so I was like, I shouldn't be worrying about this, and no one should have to worry about this. So that's why I started my business. I was just like, I actually need to do the work to try and change the way that people experience life because of their protected characteristics.
Yeah.
But also to support organizations to understand how they support their employees more effectively. Because I think, especially when we talk about race equity, which I go on a lot about, right? Race equity is the one issue that always gets parked or buried, or people don't want to talk about it because it's difficult. It's difficult. It's not easy. And I think similarly, you know, when you talk about the C word, organizations are scared to talk about it. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to support people with it. And so I really saw myself as being someone who's got lived experience that can actually support organizations with that, to have those conversations and sometimes to facilitate them myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it workshop-y style?
Yeah, so it's workshops, coaching.
Okay.
And even just reviewing policies, like what do your policies say? How does that speak to a woman, to a black woman, to a mother, to, you know, someone with a disability, etc.
Yeah.
Just helping them navigate through that.
So which is amazing work, by the way, and so necessary. I think for all of the workplaces that I've worked in, bar one, which is Treasure Tress, that piece is always missing. Like always missing. And I think that the conversation around, did I get put in recently? Or was it always diversity and equity? I feel like
equity got put in. So it was always equality, diversity, and inclusion.
Okay.
And then now you'll see EEDI, which is equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Okay.
So equity is like a step further than equality because we can't have equality until we have equity, right?
Yeah.
So that's been introduced, but then they've also introduced the B, which is belonging.
What?
Yeah. So it's, some people say equality, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So including people, but also, you know, when you have inclusion, people feel like they belong, right? So they will bring and be their full and authentic selves in the workplace.
It's feeling very lots of letters.
It really, really is.
Like, let's just do the work, guys. We don't need more letters to it.
Exactly.
But I think, the work that you're doing is really important. Fast forwarding 10 years from now, when your daughter goes to start applying for work and going into the workplace, what does a diverse, inclusive, equity, I can't think of what the word would be in this context, equity and equality, an equal workplace look like for her? Or what things would you tell her to look out for when going into the workforce?
So I would tell her to look at what the C-suite looks like. So what does the chief exec look like? What does the chief operating officer look like? Anyone with a chief in front of their names, what do they look like? Do you see anyone that looks like you up there? And then look at the next level down. What do all the directors look like? Are you represented? And then the other thing that I'd tell her to do is to look at the website. Look at how many times you see inclusion or diversity referred to and how they are doing it, right? Because a lot of companies, if you have to go right down to the bottom of the page to the footer where they have all those small little links and you see an equality, diversity and inclusion policy, and that is the only mention. Whereas I looked at an organization the other day and they had equality and diversion built into their organizational strategy. They had it built into their About Us page. They had it, you could see it represented in their C-suite. They had it built into their corporate statement. Like it was everywhere. So you know that organization lives and breathes it, right? So that would be my advice to her is like, do the work, do the research and really look deeper. And do you see that this is real for them?
And on your podcast, what would you say is maybe, I'm sure you've had loads of memorable conversations, but what would you say is one of the conversations that really stuck out to you with reference to this?
The one that's really stood out the most is, so I had one recently with a guy from the States, because one of the things that I think is still quite separate is, you know, there are black people across the world, right? But the lived experience of black people in the United States of America is very different to the lived experience of black people in the United Kingdom. And I feel like I only ever hear about it on TV, really, or on social media. So that conversation was amazing because I got to hear, you know, the lived experience of a black man in the United States, born and bred there.
Yeah.
And also to get his perspective on the noise that we're seeing in terms of people being anti-diversity and inclusion in America. So that was a really powerful conversation for me, because I think that, you know, for us in the UK, even though there were slaves in the UK, in the USA, they, you know, their police walk around with guns. Like, they legit fear for their lives on a daily basis, right? Whereas we don't necessarily fear for our lives from the police, because unless you're in the city of London or in the airport, they do not carry guns traditionally, right? So we don't worry about, and I know when I see police with guns, I'm like, oh, got a gun.
Yeah.
It's like a sight, you know? Whereas in the States, they see that all the
Every
time.
day.
Like, it's an actual fear. Whereas here, you know, I'd maybe talk back to a police officer if they stopped me. I'd be like, why have you stopped me? Whereas in the States, you've got to check yourself before you do that. It's not even worth it. So I think having that conversation was really important for me, because I think that, you know, I always talk about the power of connection. And I think that as Black people, a big part of the reason that slavery was so effective is because it was about dividing us, right? It was about dividing tribes. It was about, you know, dividing castes, dividing, you know, colors, like in terms of, you know, our different shades, to say, you know, because you're dark skinned, you're worth less than a light skinned person, and therefore putting light skinned people in charge, etc. And what that's done to us as a culture. And I think for me, having that conversation with someone from the States, I think was so important, because I think we need to, as Black people, we need to see each other as brothers and sisters again, right? And we need to understand our differing struggles, but also where we're going through the same things. So that conversation was really powerful, because he had questions about the UK, like, what's it like for you guys? You know, what are the challenges you experience, this, that, and the other? So that was a really powerful conversation for me. That really stood out.
That's amazing. And how can people listen to more of your conversations? Where are you? Are you?
So the Organizational Inclusionist is on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on Google's music platform, I believe. So it's everywhere. So just Google the Organizational Inclusionist, or just go on Apple Podcasts and you'll find it, or whichever chosen platform you have.
Amazing. And is that where people can tap into more of the work that you do?
Yes.
The best way?
But they can also just go to my website, which is Acquintz Consulting, or find me on LinkedIn, Grace Mosuro, and just connect.
I love it. But this has been such a well-rounded, warm conversation. I'm so grateful that you are here to tell your story, number one.
Thank you.
And there's so much wisdom in your full thread of life, from coming here at age 5 to now at 40, all of these threads that just create who Grace is today. If you could use one word, there's 2 more things I just want to do before we wrap, but if you could use a word to describe how you would like to describe yourself by the end of the year, what word would that be?
Married.
Yay!
I would claim that, but I'm single now, so that's probably unreasonable.
Listen, anything's possible, chair.
Listen,
Madder things have happened.
I claim it, I receive it in Jesus' name. But no, I think I use this word almost every single year. So my word this year, and probably for many years, is abundance. So at the end of this year, I would love to say that I'm abundant in every area of my life, whether that be in relationships, business, friends, family, health, peace. Like, abundant is what I'd like to be saying about this year.
And finally, at the end of every conversation, I give the guest an opportunity to ask me a question, either about the work that I do or a question that relates to the work that you do. So do you have a question?
Yes. So you said you worked at Treasure Tress.
Yes.
Treasure Tress.
Yes.
What did you do at Treasure Tress?
At Treasure Tress, I was the director of brand partnerships. So for context, Treasure Tress is a monthly subscription box for women and girls with textured hair. So every month you get sent out a box with a full wash day, so shampoo, conditioner, a leave-in of some sort of styling product, and an extra, and that's often like a tool or like an edge control or something like that. And my role was ensuring that something was always in that box every month. and liaising with brands around what that offering was, whether we're going to do 1 or 2 boxes with them throughout the year. And I also filtered into lifestyle collaboration. So anything that another organization wanted hair to speak to, I would facilitate that relationship as well. So working with music companies or other brands to build that gap, and using hair as like the conversation starter.
Love it. And I love that brand.
Do you?
I do.
Oh, I love that. My best friend runs it.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. I feel like when Treasure Tress go out, I was still struggling with 4C hair. I was doing wigs. Like I didn't know how to look after my hair.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
got it.
I've got it down pat. Or I just buy the products and take it to the hairdresser. Boom.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of inspire our kids to love their hair, right?
Yeah.
My daughter has got easily 25 black Barbies, right? Every shade and size, every hair texture. It took a while for her to love her hair. Her hair is mainly braided now because I haven't got the time. But I want her to, when she's comfortable to take her braids out, to know how to look after her hair without just slapping bare gel in it.
Yeah.
I want her to love her curls, to nurture her curls. So I love Treasure Tress for that, definitely.
Oh, well, let me connect you guys.
Yeah.
It could be a way.
You never know.
Yeah.
And I want to come to another event.
Yes.
To a event.
I'll keep you posted. Well, we're connected now anyway. But I will. Yeah, I'll see if I can connect, because I think Jamelia would actually be an exceptional guest for your podcast.
Definitely.
Because of her background and what she's building.
Definitely.
Amazing. Well, thanks, guys. Love ya. Bye.
Thanks, guys.